welcome back to my channel and welcome to more pregnancy videos. If you watched my last video and my announcement video, you know that I'm pregnant with our rainbow baby and I am just full of so many emotions. It's actually really hard to put into words how I'm feeling right now. It's a big jumble. It's a big jumble of thoughts and emotions and all of that stuff, but I thought really heavily about not filming videos like this until we formally announce. I didn't want to jinx it. I don't want to jinx this pregnancy. I really want this to be it. You know, I want this to be our rainbow baby, our take-home baby, our earthside baby. And but I have to be realistic. You can't jinx a pregnancy. There's no amount of videos that I can film or pregnancy tests I can take or blood draws or doctor's office or any emotion really that is going to change the ultimate outcome of this pregnancy. And so here I am. I'm going to film my 2-week wait video for you guys. I did one of these for my twins. If you're curious to see that, I will link it down below for you. But basically the 2-week wait is the time between when you ovulate. So most likely or very likely that's when you and your partner had sex. And then when you would miss your period, which is about 2 weeks, just depending on how long your cycles are. A lot of people refer to this as the TWW, 2-week wait. And I'm going to use the term DPO a lot. If you're unfamiliar with what that means, DPO is days past ovulation. This cycle, we were trying, but we weren't putting a lot of pressure on ourselves. We weren't making it a chore. We weren't making it a task. We were kind of taking the same approach that we did with my son 2-ish years ago, where it was kind of like, if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. So I was taking ovulation tests simply because I wanted to make sure my cycle was back to normal after my D&C. This was 1 full cycle after my D&C. So we waited the recommended amount of time, but I wanted to make sure that I was ovulating just for curiosity's sake and my health sake. And so I did take some ovulation tests, and the day I got my peak ovulation test is the day that I'm going to consider when I ovulated. So DPO is going to be days past that day. If you guys are anything like me, when I was in the 2-week wait a couple pregnancies ago, I binge watched these videos like crazy. I feel like they're so interesting, but I think it's important to note that every woman and every pregnancy is totally different. You could be experiencing these symptoms and not be pregnant, or you could be experiencing totally different symptoms and you can be pregnant, or you could be experiencing no symptoms and be pregnant. So it just kind of depends, but I still think they're really interesting. Okay, DPO 1 through 5, I have written down no symptoms at all. Maybe I was slightly moody, I have written down, trouble sleeping, but really no true symptoms. 6 DPO, I was feeling very, very weepy. I remember this was Easter time and we were doing an Easter egg hunt with Lincoln with our neighborhood, and I started like tearing up at the Easter egg hunt, which is so weird. I also wrote down heavy feeling uterus. 7 DPO, I wrote vivid dreams last night, super tired, fell asleep almost instantly, sharp cramp on the right side in the middle of the night. Okay, let's talk a little bit about this really quickly because I've noticed this with every single one of my pregnancies. It's one of my very, very first symptoms that I get. And it's like a sharp pain in my uterus area, whether it be the right side or the left side or just the middle. When I sneeze, when I flip around in bed really quickly, when I stand up really quickly, it's just quick movements cause this like sharp pain. And I did a little bit of Google research, Dr. Google, and apparently that's a fairly common symptom, and it's round ligament pain. So it's just your uterus kind of stretching and getting ready to harbor a baby or harboring an embryo. So I've had this with every single one of my pregnancies. I also wrote down short on breath during walk and boobs feel bouncy. So the shortness of breath is huge for me. It is a huge telltale sign for me. That and the sharp pain is like those two things, especially together, like pregnant. Like, because it's happened to me every single time, even before I get a positive pregnancy test. The bouncy boobs I wanted to talk about because in all of my previous pregnancies, my boobs have felt very sore. But this particular pregnancy, they didn't start feeling sore until after I would have missed my period. And that alarmed me a little bit at first, but I have to remind myself, like, my body is still, I don't want to say getting back to normal after my last pregnancy, because it is back to normal, or else I wouldn't have been able to get pregnant again. But it's kind of like used to the pregnant feeling, you know what I mean? And so perhaps they were sore, they just felt normal, you know, normal soreness to me because I was pregnant, you know, not too long ago. A DPO, I wrote down negative pregnant test. So I did take a little cheapy test. I tried not to put a whole ton of pressure on myself this time around as far as testing goes. I did have the cheapy tests though, so I figured I would use those before busting out the first response tests. I do have the first response tests right here. I had 3 of them that I took 3 different days, not all the same day. But at a DPO, like, the chances of getting a positive pregnancy test are pretty much, you know, it's not really gonna happen. So this was more like I just needed to stop thinking about it. So I tested just to like get it off my mind, but of course it was negative. I wrote down that sharp pain again. So sharp pain in left ovary, in my uterus last night when I was sneezing, short on breath during walk, faint pain in left ovary area when I stood up out of the rocker with Lincoln, very mild period-like cramps. So this, I want to say implantation happened either late 8 DPO or 9 DPO. I want to say that like sharp ovary pain. So I think I ovulated out of my left ovary, by the way. Like, that is the ovary that the egg was released from. I know that from the ultrasound. The ultrasound tech told me, hey, it looks like you ovulated out of your left ovary. How they can tell, I don't know. I looked at the screen and I saw nothing, but she said that. So her saying that and then me writing this down makes me think, you know, I think that was my ovary releasing progesterone or something obviously happened, and then the cramping is normal. 9 DPO, I wrote down vivid dreams. Some were scary. I remember I woke up in like a panic thinking that like somebody was breaking into our house. Like, I just had these like scary vivid dreams. Period-like cramps, I wrote that down again. Bouncy boobs, they felt jiggly. I was really tired, my tummy hurt. I felt like I was going to have diarrhea. The whole day that day, I felt like I was going to have diarrhea, but I didn't. And then I wrote down dull lower back pain. I find it interesting about the period-like cramps. I've been really ultra aware of that this particular pregnancy, just because of the miscarriage I recently went through. And so I was really worried at first, but I have to remind myself, like, my uterus is growing and stretching, and you know, there's an embryo implanting in there, and all of these feelings on my uterus are normal. You know, it's going through a lot down there. So these cramps are normal, but they did worry me a little bit at first. 10 DPO, I wrote down, I woke up with a racing heart and my back pain was worse. So this lower back pain, again, is another thing that makes me think that's when implantation happened. And then I wrote down slight uterus cramping, still no obvious sore boobs, positive first response and pregmate, so the cheap one and a first response. And then feeling overwhelmed, irritated underarms. Okay, hold on, we'll get back to that in a second. Irritable and short fused. I had a dream during my nap about talking to a little girl about her December birthday. So all very interesting. The irritated underarms, I think we need to talk about here for a second, because I don't remember this happening in any other pregnancy, where there's been on and off spurts ever since this day of my underarms just being irritated. And I can't tie it into like I shaved that day, it was a different deodorant, a different body wash. Like, I can't figure out what's causing the irritation, but it happens on and off like once a week. It's the strangest thing. And then I have to let my underarms like detox for a day, like no deodorant, nothing like that. And then they're fine like the next day or 2 days later. So it must be a hormonal thing, I don't know. I found it really strange and really just like weird. Also, the dream about talking to a little girl about her December birthday. I don't know if I was just trying to manifest that in my brain or what, but the baby's due date is December 19th, and I knew that. I knew like, okay, if I conceive this cycle, our baby's birthday will be in December. And so as far as it being a little girl, I don't know. 11 DPO, I wrote down very vivid dreams, not pregnancy related, but they were very scary. I remember dreams about like my dog Lola had hooves for feet. So instead of feet, she had hooves like a pig or a horse. And then her legs fell off, and like I had that written down. And I just remember waking up and being like, oh my God, like these really strangely vivid, just kind of scary dreams. I also wrote down very vivid, invasive, scary thoughts throughout the day, not pregnancy related. My anxiety has been at an all-time high this pregnancy for obvious reasons. I've had invasive, anxious thoughts about everything and anything that I do, pregnancy and non-pregnancy related. I've had thoughts of like knives flying across the kitchen, spiders crawling in my food. I've had dreams of like tripping and dropping Lincoln over the stairs, and just like these crazy thoughts that I've never had before. And they started literally the day after I got a positive pregnancy test. So I know it's all mental, some of it's hormonal, but it's been bad. 12 DPO, I wrote down, slept absolutely horribly, woke up several times, tossed and turned, awake for several hours, sharp pain in uterus when sneezing. Again, when I sneezed laying down, when I flopped around too quickly in bed. So we talked about that already. I was very irritable, very hot, shortness of breath, thirsty, and then I got a positive digital test that day. This is actually the day I told my husband was 12 DPO. 13 DPO, I wrote down trouble sleeping, shortness of breath, diarrhea, and left boob was sore. So this was the day I finally had like a little bit of boob soreness, but it was just in one boob, not both boobs. The trouble sleeping, you can see it's definitely a trend. Shortness of breath is definitely a trend. Diarrhea is, I think that was nerves if I'm being totally honest. But I have heard that that could be a pretty common pregnancy symptom. 14 DPO, which would have been the day that I got my period, but I didn't. I wrote down both boobs are sore-ish. I think at this point I was just trying to make my boobs sore. They weren't actually sore until right around like a week later after this. And then they got really sore around 6 weeks. But I wrote down shortness of breath, really thirsty, increased sense of smell, and period-like cramps, especially when laying down. So you can see, I mean, there's nothing super alarming about my 2-week wait symptoms. A lot of them are very common. The anxious thoughts, I think, is very likely tied into pregnancy after a miscarriage, if I'm being totally honest, because I've never had that happen to me before. The irritated underarms is very strange to me, but everything else is, you know, pretty common as far as that symptoms go. I did write down right here, so I wanted to highlight my boobs were not as sore this time, which we already talked about. My first signs are shortness of breath, trouble sleeping, increased thirst, and then sharp uterus pains. That is pretty much it. I hope that you enjoyed listening to me talk about weird body symptoms that may or may not even apply to you, but I know people love watching these videos. I know I do. My mood is all over the place with this pregnancy. I'm just nervous about everything, you guys. So keeping my fingers crossed, praying every single day, and knowing that it's in God's hands and we just have to wait and see what happens. So that is that. I hope you guys enjoyed watching, and I'll talk to you next time. Bye.